All right, so in today's video, I want to talk about zinc and its role in immune function. And, immunity has there's multiple different, say, jobs for the immune system. And of course, we're all interested in antiviral defenses, given the events of the last 18 months. And zinc is intimately involved in antiviral defenses, and we're going to spend a lot of time on that tonight, but we're also going to understand that it's involved in non-antiviral immune functions as well. So this is we'll do that with this first study, and then the second study is we're going to tie in to how zinc plays a role in severity of cases in, say, a virus type infection, and how your metabolic setup is involved there. So we'll start with this study called metalloimmunology, the metal ion controlled immunity. And this is a great study if you feel like, say you're flying to Switzerland and need 55 pages of something to read. If you get through this, I'd be really impressed. Do that. But if we jump down to the zinc information, I'll let you read it, but there's a really good graphic that that summarizes it for us that I want to focus on. So this graphic is about zinc in the immune system. And you can see in the center there is a zinc ion, and there's arrows going lots of different directions. And those arrows are telling us zinc's roles immunologically. If we back up a minute, just immune system 101 is, in med school, they teach you there's two immune systems. There's the innate immune system, which are the first responders, say, and the tissue resident immune cells. So say you get a cut on your finger, right away the innate immune system responds because you've got macrophages and fibroblasts and neutrophils in the tissue to respond right away. Or say you have an infection, well, right away you've got innate immune cells to mount a response to that infection and buy time. What are they buying time for? They're buying time for the adaptive immune system to respond. And whereas that innate immune system is, say, the first responders, local police, that sort of role, the adaptive immune system is the highly trained assassins. Okay, they're your T cells and your B cells. B cells make antibodies which tag enemy, recognize enemy and tag it, and then T cells come kill it. And the T and B cells can take 3 to 5 days to clone out after the injury or the infection. So the innate system, local police, hold down the fort while we wait for the more highly trained fighters to clone out and arrive on the scene. Zinc plays a role in both the innate and the adaptive immune system. And you can see here, it even says zinc is indispensable for the proper function of the innate and adaptive immune system. So what does it do? It does a lot. One thing it does is promote monocyte recruitment to tissues. So say you have an infection in your spleen, okay, or in your big toe. Well, in the bloodstream, you have monocytes, and monocytes will travel in the bloodstream to the area of injury or infection and then exit the blood and enter the tissue. So enter the big toe tissue where you've got an infection or an injury. And once it enters the tissue, it's called a macrophage. And a macrophage is Latin for big eater. So macrophage is going to eat that infection. So say that's a bacterium or a virus of some sort. It's going to engulf it or eat it, and then it's going to present it to a dendritic cell. And that dendritic cell is that kind of weird spider-looking cell right there in the upper left. When the macrophage presents it to the dendritic cell then hops into the blood or the lymph system and goes to a lymph node and presents the fragment of the bacterium or the virus or whatever the macrophage is presenting. It presents that. The dendritic cell presents that to the B and T cells in your lymph node, and they recognize it, and then they clone out and go back to the location where the infection is and kick butt. Okay, so the local police brought evidence to the more highly trained military fighters, they clone out and go back and kick butt, clear it up, and you've at that point hopefully cleared the infection, cleaned up the damaged tissue, and you're on your way. You don't have a chronic infection or a gangrenous wound or something like that. So one function of the zinc ion is to promote monocyte recruitment, differentiation to macrophages in the tissue, and then that process I just described occurred. Zinc is also important in neutrophil net formation. So over here in the upper right, neutrophils make nets. Net is an acronym for neutrophil extracellular traps. And so basically nets will trap microbes in the tissue for destruction. And part of net formation and neutrophil production of net formation will increase calprotectin. So those of you who have had stool tests and you have high calprotectin on your stool, that's an inflammatory marker based on neutrophil production. So if you have high calprotectin on the stool, you have high neutrophil response, and you have, that's a good thing because you have neutrophils to show a true positive. I've had patients that have deficient neutrophils on their blood work, and they have a calprotectin of 0, and you're like, well, there's no way this person isn't inflamed in their GI tract. Well, they're not making calprotectin because they don't have neutrophils, which are needed to make calprotectin. So that would be a false negative in that instance. And so we want to improve neutrophil counts so we can see a true positive or see what the actual calprotectin level is in that person's GI tract. Zinc is important for mast cell degranulation. Mast cells degranulate in response to some allergen or parasite, mold, or yeast. So when mast cells degranulate, they degranulate or they dump histamine. So a histamine response, a proper histamine response, requires zinc. Natural killer cells, cytotoxic activity. Natural killer cells are assassins for us. There's innate natural killer cells and there's natural killer T cells. Zinc's involved in both of those doing their job, and those are key in clearing virus and clearing cancer cells. And then you see, lastly here, as we work our way around the clock in the 8 o'clock area and the say 9 to 10 o'clock area, you see the B lymphocyte development and the T lymphocyte development. Zinc is key in B lymphocyte development, which B lymphocytes end up producing antibodies for us. So if we're exposed to a virus and we want to show antibody response, we need zinc to do that appropriately. If we want to have long-lived antibody response, so long-term natural immunity to something, we need to have optimal zinc levels, so we make B cells that result in antibody production. And then zinc is key for T cell development, and T cells are the killers. Okay, they're another form of assassins. We've got natural killer cell assassins, we've got T cell assassins. So the antibodies made by B cells go and tag, say, the virus. If you're when you're exposed to it, the T cells recognize that tag and kill any cell that has that tag on it. So this is why, in the context of recent events, you've learned that zinc is a key nutrient for antiviral defenses and for optimal response and low severity, because if you have optimal zinc levels, you're going to be promoting an optimal immune response at all levels, innate immune response and adaptive immune response. So we want optimal zinc levels. I hope this helps you understand it a little better. That's what zinc does. How does zinc get into the cell, though? For zinc to enter a cell, we need zinc transporters, and we need zinc ionophores, and there's various things that our body makes. So zinc transporters are genetically produced by our body, and zinc ionophores are things that help the zinc enter the cell nucleus, where it can play a role in inhibition of viral replication. So zinc is key in immune response, immune cells killing virally infected cells. But if we can get zinc inside the cell, we could perhaps not even need that immune response, because if we can get the zinc inside the cell into the nucleus where it can prevent viral replication, then the virus doesn't replicate and spread and put a demand on our immune system. So this study is from 2014, and it's titled "The Alteration of Zinc Transporter Gene Expression is Associated with Inflammatory Markers in Obese Women." So that's a mouthful, but basically we have genes that code for zinc transporter production, and zinc transporters take zinc into and out of cells, depending on which ones are working. And the study is looking at how does inflammation in obese women impact zinc transporter gene function. And let's just dive in. Let's read through it a little bit. So obesity, a chronic inflammatory state, is associated with altered zinc metabolism. Okay, so if you're obese, typically it's due to, obesity drives chronic inflammation. Now, 20% of obese people are metabolically healthy, so we can't just look at an obese person and judge a book by its cover. Okay, I can't be a skinny person and see an obese person and say I'm healthier than them, because they might be one of the 20% of obese people that are metabolically healthy, and I might be a skinny fat person, right? So we can't judge books by their covers. When you see a good example is African American women commonly have large busts and large booties, right? But that is fat that is subcutaneous fat. Whereas if you see a white man with a huge pendulous abdomen, like a big fat belly, and no butt, that's more visceral adiposity or organ fat. And organ fat is the fat that is highly inflammatory and highly dangerous. So just because someone's got a lot of subcutaneous fat doesn't mean that they're metabolically deranged. It's an aside, but I want you to understand it because it does matter. So obesity is a chronic inflammatory state, and that would be, if these people are metabolically, we're talking about the 80% who are metabolically unhealthy, okay? And those people, the chronic inflammation driven by obesity alters zinc metabolism. The body produces zinc transporters, and it uses messenger RNA to do that, okay? So mRNA is translated to DNA, DNA is transcribed, and you make proteins. So the mRNA levels of many zinc transporters are significantly lower in obese women, and expression of these genes was inversely correlated with BMI and body fat percentage. So what that says is we have genes that produce zinc transporters. Zinc transporters carry zinc into and out of cells. And obese women have significantly lower levels of zinc transporters. And that's inversely correlated with BMI and body fat. So the higher your body fat, the lower your zinc transporter levels. In addition, inflammatory markers were significantly higher in obese women. Okay, that makes sense because obesity drives chronic inflammation. Of course, we'll have higher inflammation. The mRNA levels of certain transporters were inversely correlated with C-reactive protein, which is a big-time inflammatory marker, and tumor necrosis factor alpha. So the higher the inflammation, the lower zinc transporter levels. These results suggest that the expression of zinc transporters may be altered in obese individuals. Changes in zinc transporters may also be related to the inflammatory state associated with obesity. So they don't come out and say it directly, but they're basically saying, the inflammatory state that obesity causes is associated with decreased zinc transporter levels. And so decreasing zinc transporter levels will put a stick in the spokes of zinc's role in our immune system. Obesity is a worldwide public health problem. Interesting. Because if we think about recent events, just think about the association of obesity and metabolic derangement with outcomes, okay? Obesity is a chronic inflammatory state characterized by altered adipokine production and increased levels of inflammation. In obese individuals, C-reactive protein, TNF-alpha, interleukin-6 are higher. Zinc metabolism is altered in obesity. Obese individuals have lower blood zinc concentrations than non-obese individuals. Okay, so if an obese person has lower blood zinc concentration than non-obese, then they'll probably put up a worse fight, all else the same, against a virus than the non-obese person. In obese women, red blood cell zinc concentration is inversely associated with waist circumference and body mass index. So the larger an obese woman's waist, the lower the zinc inside their red blood cells, which again sets them up to be less efficient at the immune response to infection. Reduction of body fat by dietary intervention in obese teens led to an increase in the level of intracellular zinc. So look at that. They took teens, and if we lower their body fat, they have an increase in zinc. You lower their body fat, they have improved immune function, or improved chance for immune function in terms of zinc, the zinc dependent part. So we'll go through this stuff. It has been shown that zinc supplementation or depletion alters zinc transporter expression levels in cultured human white blood cells and in white blood cells isolated from human blood. So if you're depleted, that impacts zinc transporter expression, and if you supplement, that impacts it. So great, we can take a supplement and improve our immune system. We can take zinc, improve our zinc transporter levels, improve zinc's role in our immune system. So if someone says there's nothing you can do for a viral infection, nothing natural you can do, well, the science doesn't support that. The science says if we take zinc, we can increase zinc transportation into and out of cells, and therefore provide zinc for optimal immune response. So last thing I just want to pull out of here is this study defined obesity as a BMI of greater than 25. Some people don't define obesity until greater than 30. So I just want you to understand that 25 or higher is obese. BMI is not the best or most accurate marker because, you know, height, it's based on height and weight. And so at my peak playing weight in football, I was 6'2", 217. My body fat was 12%, if I remember correctly, but based on the BMI, I was obese. So, you know, if you're very tall or very short, this number can be skewed, but it's one way they're measuring it. They also looked at anthropometric measurements, so waist measurements. They looked at blood pressure, fasting blood sugar, and different urine samples, as well as a 3-day diet to look at the inputs in the obese and non-obese women. So we don't have to go much further into that. I just wanted, it's probably further than you wanted to hear, but I want you to understand that zinc levels, it is established that metabolically unhealthy people, especially obese people, this paper looking at women, but obesity decreases availability of zinc. Obesity and inflammation decrease availability of zinc for the body, which if you're lacking zinc, your immune system will not function optimally. And if you're trying to fight a virus or a bacterial infection or clean up a wound or whatever it is, having insufficient zinc is not going to allow you to respond properly. So if someone tells you nutrition doesn't matter and nutrients don't matter, there's nothing you can do to improve your immune system, they're just not reading science.